Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be looking at the Jason Best Kills horror story. So let's get into it. A boy and his friend were playing near a lake in North Carolina. Suddenly, the boy lost his balance and fell right into the water. His friend started to panic because he was unable to swim, and so he began screaming for help. His cries were heard by a passing motorist who pulled over to see what had happened. The man dove into the water and managed to pull the boy out. He wrapped him in a blanket from his car and sped off to the nearest hospital. Unfortunately, the child died shortly after arriving. The man felt awful about the situation and went to visit the boy's family. They thanked him profusely for trying to save the kid. But when they all went to the funeral, there was an unexpected surprise. As the man stood by the casket, the mother of the deceased child approached him. She looked at him angrily and said, "You should have known better than to try and save my son. My Ronnie would have lived forever if you hadn't interfered." Confused, the man asked what she meant. "Didn't you know that me and my husband made a deal with the devil years ago? Our firstborn son would live forever, but our second would die young. We were willing to make any sacrifice to ensure Ronnie's immortality. It was only you that broke the cycle." With that, she turned away, leaving the man shocked and horrified. If you want to learn more about Jason Best, then check out our series all about him. In this one, we covered 10 things you didn't know about Jason Voorhees. Starting off at number 10, Crystal Lake. It might seem odd that we're starting off with a body of water, but there's not actually a whole lot to say about Jason's origins without talking about it. You see, Crystal Lake plays a huge role in Jason Voorhees' story. In Friday the 13th, Part 2, it is revealed that Jason drowned as a child in the lake after Pamela Vorhees tried to get rid of him. This caused his mother to go on a killing spree at Camp Crystal Lake, targeting the camp counselors because they were responsible for her son's death. Number 9, Hockey Mask. For those of you who don't know, Jason Voorhees actually didn't wear a hockey mask in the original Friday the 13th movie. Instead, he wore a burlap sack over his head. However, in Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason donned a hockey mask, which quickly became iconic. This is also where we learned that the hockey mask was what made Jason appear unkillable. If you recall, in the previous film, his mother could take off his burlap sack, and as soon as she did, Jason stopped moving like a puppet whose strings had been cut. When his hockey mask was hit with an axe in Part 2, however, he continued to move. Because of this, the mask was basically a symbol of Jason's immortality. No8 Machete. Another weapon that Jason used frequently was his trusty machete. He first appeared with it in Friday the 13th Part 2 when he decapitated a counselor with it. Since then, the machete has become just as iconic as Jason's hockey mask. In fact, there was even a Friday the 13th game for the Nintendo Entertainment System based entirely around the use of the machete. Although Jason is most commonly portrayed wielding the machete, it's not actually his preferred method of killing. His go-to weapon is actually the large kitchen knife that belongs to Pamela Vorhees. In the films, he can be seen using the knife on many occasions. But perhaps the most famous time was when he killed Alice Hardy in the original Friday the 13th. Of course, the reason why he switched to other weapons was because he used up the knife pretty quickly, considering he killed quite a few people before finally meeting his end. No6 never truly dies. You can kill Jason, but he'll always come back. For example, in Friday the 13th Part 4, Jason seemingly dies from electrocution, yet he returns in the next movie anyway. And in Friday the 13th Part 5, Jason is blasted in the face with a shotgun at close range. But yet again, he comes back. The reason Jason is able to return despite being killed varies depending on the film. Sometimes it's because he's already dead, and sometimes it's because he was never really alive to begin with. This brings us to a very interesting theory that claims Jason was always a ghost. This makes sense given that he could walk through walls and was sometimes transparent. Not to mention, if you look closely, he doesn't really cast a shadow. Number 5. Pamela Vorhees. Jason Voorhees' mother, Pamela Vorhees, is one of the most important characters in the franchise. Without her, Jason wouldn't exist. In fact, she is the main antagonist of the first Friday the 13th movie. Pamela is the reason that Jason became such a killer, too. When he drowned as a child, she blamed the camp counselors and vowed revenge. She took out her rage on the counselors by brutally murdering them one by one. Even though she ended up dying herself, Jason continued her mission. Pamela appears in many of the subsequent movies, usually in the form of flashbacks or in Jason's hallucinations. She also appears in the Friday the 13th video game for the NES. In it, Pamela acts as the final boss, and she can only be defeated by throwing her own machete back at her. No.4. Revived by lightning. In Friday the 13th Part 3, Jason is struck by lightning while holding a machete. Despite the fact that he was supposedly dead, the lightning revived him. And as soon as he got up, he chased after Chris Higgins, who had just found her way out of the woods. Although Jason didn't catch up with her, he did find another camper named Chili, who he proceeded to murder. In the special features of Friday the 13th Part 3, the director explained that he wanted to keep Jason's origin story a secret for as long as possible. This is why he waited so long to reveal that Jason was actually the killer all along. No.3 Killed by his sister. One of the most brutal ways Jason meets his demise is in Jason Goes to Hell, where he's actually killed by his sister, a character who doesn't appear in any other movie. If you haven't seen this installment, then you probably haven't even heard of her. Her name is Margaret Voorhees, and she is able to defeat Jason thanks to a magical amulet that gives its wearer the power to control death itself. After taking Jason's life, Margaret uses the amulet to bring herself back from the dead. But she ends up killing everyone else on the island and becoming the new ruler of Hell. Thankfully, Jason comes back in the next movie, Jason X, set in the year 2455. He kills his sister and assumes his role as ruler of Hell once again. No.2 Dismembered. There's nothing more painful than being ripped limb from limb. And that's exactly what happens to Jason in Jason Takes Manhattan. During the climax of the film, Jason is thrown into a river, but he survives somehow. A little while later, he begins stalking the remaining survivors, but they're eventually able to defeat him by dismembering him. They chop his arms off, legs off, head off, and everything else. The only part of his body that remains intact is his torso. And even that is destroyed soon after by an explosion. In case you were wondering, yes, Jason does come back in the next movie, but the writers chose to ignore what happened to him in Jason Takes Manhattan, stating that it was all a dream. No.1 Killed by a woman. Unlike Jason, who's killed hundreds upon hundreds of people throughout the franchise, there are only 2 women who have ever defeated him. The first one is, of course, his mother, Pamela Vorhees, but she isn't the only one. In Jason Goes to Hell, a woman named Diana Kimball defeats Jason by stabbing him with a crow skull. In the novelization of Friday the 13th Part 3, Jason is actually killed by a woman named Annie, who stabs him in the heart with a pair of scissors. Considering how overpowered Jason tends to be, it's always nice to see him taken down by someone who's smaller than him. Well, that's everything for today. Thank you so much for watching the Jason Best Kills horror story. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you liked it, please consider subscribing so you can be notified every time we upload a new video. Until next time, stay safe.